This is the take two of the video that I put up, but what we're doing today is basically just going over the different types of safety response protocols that we have for different sorts of crises and emergencies here. So we have 15 minutes to do this video, 5 different scenarios to talk through, and so we're going to dedicate about 3 minutes to each one, get you guys out of here at a good time and out for lunch. And so the first thing that we're going to go over today is a fire. And so we've broken these up into a couple of different ways, how we're going to resolve it, how we're going to get ahead of the crisis, and then how we're going to communicate is probably the biggest thing. And I want to cover communication between staff, students and parents, and then also the people that we're going to be working with outside of our school to help with the crisis that we're going through. So starting with fire, what we're going to do is in response to a fire, when the fire alarms go off, we'll evacuate the building using our designated routes that are posted in every classroom, posted throughout the hallway as well. And we're going to use our card and attendance sheet system that are in the red folders that we have inside of each classroom as well to account for all students and staff, and then wait for the fire department to clear us before we go back inside the building. We'll have admin posted up in each evacuation zone to make sure that all staff and classrooms have made it out there, account for the students, get an accurate account of who is absent that day and who's missing. How we'll communicate is internally the fire alarm will go off. You'll know that it's time to evacuate because the fire alarm is going. We'll use radio communication amongst our administrators, internal messaging on our messaging app that we have between staff members. And then externally, we would want to notify the parents through the district messaging system when we know that all the students are safe and we've conducted the fire department has cleared us. When we're communicating with the emergency responders, we'll communicate with them via 911, or I believe our fire alarms have the ability to contact that department when the alarm goes off, when it's tripped by a smoke or some sort of fire trigger or something. So how do we prevent, or how do we respond to this crisis? What practices do we do? Well, we're going to be doing regular fire drills. I know that the TEA has an amount of fire drills that you have to do for the year. We would want to make sure we're at least doing that as a minimum, if not more, and we're going to practice like we play. So we want to make sure that people are following the evacuation routes exactly as they are put on the maps, going to their locations, and so that way when we have an actual emergency, we're ready to go. We'll train our staff so that they know exactly how to fill out the attendance sheets that account for every student. And then we'll have fire extinguisher inspections regularly. We could do some training on how to use fire extinguishers if the teacher needed to do that. And then finally have those clear evacuation maps posted in every classroom and in the hallways as well. The individuals or groups that would play a role in this solution that we would be communicating with, which of course would be the fire department, EMS if there are any injuries. District admin would need to know if there was a fire alarm pulled, and so we would want to be communicating with them closely, making sure that they know what's going on with the building, and then law enforcement if it's needed, okay? All right, moving on to if we have an intruder on campus. So this can vary, and we have standard response protocol sheets posted throughout the school so that the terminology is known when it comes over. But how we would resolve this is we would either implement a secure or a lockdown procedure depending on the threat location. So how we've done this in the past is a secure versus a lockdown. Secure is just all exterior doors need to be shut and we're not letting anybody in or out of the building, but business as usual inside the actual building. And so we want to limit restroom breaks and things like that just to kind of control some chaos. But teaching is still going on in the classroom. This is probably that there is a police chase or something that's happening outside of the campus, and we just want to make sure that that person is not coming into our campus trying to hide out or do something that they need to do there. Versus a lockdown, when the threat is in the building, locks, lights, out of sight, locking the doors, getting kids away from any visible windows, keeping them quiet, turning all the lights off, and making sure that we are that way. So the standard response protocol, the SRP that's posted in every classroom, would have the vocabulary and the definitions for those things in there to differentiate between secure and lockdown. Secure entrances and monitor that people aren't going in and out until law enforcement resolves that incident if it is outside the building. Now, how we would communicate this is internally, we would call the secure or the lockdown using that SRP terminology, and we would do this over the intercom system. We want to follow up communication through radios and secured staff messaging. If it comes to a lockdown, I'll touch on this later about exactly how we would get out of that. But in a secure, we could just call it and say, hey, the secure is over, the threat outside the building has been neutralized. We want to avoid any sort of detailed intercom communication, just in case those things are compromised. And then externally, communicating with parents through the district communication system to ensure that the safety of our students has been accomplished. What we could do beforehand is we want to make sure that we are having visitor management procedures where we know that when we come into these sorts of secures and lockdowns that it is nobody in and out of the building, not parents picking up their students or anything like that. And we want to make sure that exterior doors are locked all the time. TEA is doing exterior door checks regularly, and they'll even ding you if there's something there that could prop the door open. And so we want to train our staff on that and do regular drills using the SRP terminology so that no one's surprised when we do it. Who we would communicate with is law enforcement to see when the threat outside the building has been taken care of, district admin, keeping them up to speed, and then our SROs, our school resource officers on campus, the emergency management personnel. There would be someone on my staff that is in charge of all these sorts of drills, and so we'd want to be in close communication with them, and then move students and staff to our designated shelter areas, so communicating where they go there. Okay, tornado. Not a huge threat for our area, but something that we definitely have to cover. We just move students and staff to the designated shelter areas. There's going to be areas of our school that can withstand high winds and tornadoes, and we want to make sure that those places are clearly marked and that we have maps, evacuation maps, similar to the fire evacuation maps that are in every classroom and in hallways. Internally, we want to make an intercom system announcement unless the power has gone out and we don't have intercom system. At that point, we would rely on internal communication with our messaging app or radios or a combination of the two. We want to work closely with weather systems and alerts, making sure that everyone's up to speed on how the weather is doing. Externally, parent notifications would go out after the threat has passed, making sure that we know that all students are safe. What we can do before the crisis is more drills. We can practice where we're going in these evacuation scenarios. The frequency for which we're doing the drills shouldn't be as much as a fire drill because the threat is not as big, but again, we want to follow those minimum parameters that TEA sets about drills that we have to do. We want to find the shelter locations, monitor our weather systems, and make sure that our emergency supply kits are ready to go so that we're not surprised by that if we need something when there is a tornado threat. The individuals that we would communicate with, National Weather Service, we want to see before we're hopefully calling these things before the weather even gets there, or maybe even on predicted bad weather, we can do an early release or something to get the students outside the building so that or home so that we're not caught in something like that. But we would then want to make sure that district admin knows and the first responders that come out to us. Okay, finally, but the big one is shooter on campus. So this is an immediate lockdown. Okay, this is on the SRP terminology. Lockdown is very clear. Locks, lights, out of sight. These are the three things that you need to do to secure the building and make sure that we have the least amount of crisis on our hand that we can have. The statistic that was given to me is active shooters have an average of 3 minutes before they're neutralized by law enforcement. And so in that 3 minutes, they don't want to waste time with locked doors. And so as they move through a campus, when they meet a barrier like a locked door, the most likely scenario is that they're just going to keep moving on. And so if we have these kids, lights are off, doors are locked, lights are off, and they are out of sight of the doorway, they may not even think that anyone's in there. They're just going to keep on moving. So we want to do that immediate lockdown. In our school, we have a light system where when a lockdown is called, there's a red flashing light that goes on, and then an automated message comes over the intercom, hey, we are in a lockdown, it locks lights out of sight, same SRP terminology. Now, we want to prioritize life and safety until that threat is neutralized. So if we're talking about communication, though, we can call that through the intercom, but the one thing that I want to be very clear through our drills and through communicating with our staff, is that coming out of a lockdown, that cannot be communicated over the intercom. The only way that we can get out of a lockdown is if a officer or student resource officer comes and physically unlocks the door, comes inside, says, hey, we're out of this now, and is going and unlocking every single door on the hallway throughout the entire school. And the reason for that is if the shooter is on campus and is threatening someone with their life or someone they love to make a sort of call on the intercom, like, hey, we want everybody out, we want them to be able to go through with that threat without it actually resulting in people coming outside. And so we need to be very clear that nothing releases you from a lockdown except for a officer or an individual SRO coming and physically unlocking the door and letting people out. The other thing is when we're knocking on doors or doing like that, you don't want to respond to that for the exact same reason. It might be the shooter that's there knocking, saying, hey, let me in, I'm some kid in the hallway, or whatever. So we just want to be very clear. So we want to do the immediate lockdown. Further communication is through our radios, emergency apps. We don't want to do anything over the intercom. And then externally, we want to communicate with the district just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And how we get ahead of these things is just drills. And so it's funny, I think that the TEA threshold for the amount of drills that you do is that the fire drill is the one that you do the most frequently. And I would love to see the statistic on how many fires we've had in schools over the past 20 years versus active shooters on campus, because I think that this is probably our premier drill that we need to be practicing. And it's hard to get kids to take these sorts of drills seriously, but I think through heavy reward systems and managing teacher and their classroom management and their behavior, I think we could get students to take this very seriously, especially if we were to have people come on campus and talk about the role of active shooters and how they can prevent them from taking many lives. I think we can really instill the importance of practicing like we play and doing these drills well. But the staff preparedness, getting them all down in the SRP terminology and making sure that they understand it so that they're not surprised by it when it comes time for it. Obviously, we'd be communicating with law enforcement, SWAT, and EMS if it came to it, the district admin support center, making sure that they know what's going on. And then afterwards, if we need to communicate with mental health teams or reunification teams to get them reunified with their parents, and we're communicating with them after the threat has been done, or ensuring the student's safety in that. So that's active shooter. The main takeaways is we can call that drill with an intercom, or we can call that crisis through the intercom, but we cannot release through the intercom. The only release is with a physical key. Lastly, we have loss of electricity. So how we're going to resolve this is we're going to rely on our secondary power alternative systems like generators, backup things that come up. We want to maintain supervision that our active systems are available and working, and we want to determine whether sheltering is okay if it's a big weather event, or dismissal is okay. And weather plays an important role in this as well, because if it's particularly hot or cold outside, and we think that the students could be susceptible to those heat changes, we want to make sure that we are communicating early dismissal quickly so that we don't have any other issues with overheating or being too cold. How we would communicate is internally. Obviously, we're out of power, and so we don't want to use the intercom system because it's not going to work. But we can use our radios, which just rely on a charge, our cell phones, in-person communication. Assuming there is no weather threat, we can move through the building and we can walk and inform teachers of what's going on. But yeah, the intercom system's not working, so we want to rely on our messaging app. Which brings me, if I could jump ahead just a little bit before the crisis, we really want to make sure that our communication apps and alternative ways of communicating are fully downloaded and used by everybody, because that would be the worst time for someone to figure out that they haven't downloaded the messaging app when they have an emergency on their hands. Externally, we would want to notify parents through the district messaging system if we want them early released, of course ensuring their safety. But if it came to something where a power line was cut and we've communicated with emergency management offices or the utility company, and they've assured us that, hey, this power is not coming on anytime soon, then we would want to communicate that early release to all the parents so that they can come in and get their kids, because we can't do instruction without proper power, especially when it comes to AC or heating. Before the crisis, we want to check all of our backup power systems, our emergency lighting system, our communication redundancy, and continuity plans to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And we're regularly checking our backup power systems and generators to ensure that when something like this comes up, we make sure that those systems work. Outside of that, other groups that we'd be communicating with, of course, we want to check with the utility company to see when that power is going to come back on, the district maintenance to see if it's anything on our end that they need to go fix, and then just keeping admin up to date on what is going on in their campuses. Transportation department, if we need to get buses in to get all these kids home. So those are the 5 crises that I wanted to cover today on how we're going to get ahead of these crises and communicate with our students, staff, and parents, and then also the external people. The biggest takeaway is that we're going to be doing regular drills so that if something like this comes up, we'll be fully prepared to do it. So that should be around 15 minutes of completion. I appreciate your time. Thanks for being here.